So welcome everyone to the first panel of the day. My name is Leanne, my pronouns are she, they, and I'm going to be moderating this panel today, the title of which is Unified Voices, Accessibility and Disability Advocacy in Bi+ communities. So just quick introduction for myself, and then I'm going to let everyone on the panel introduce themselves. My name's Leanne. I am a neurodivergent, autistic and ADHD bisexual person. I make a lot of content online about polyamory, but that's not what we're talking about today, but that's me. I guess going along, we'll introduce ourselves, starting, this mic is, okay. Starting with Norma.
Yeah, hello. My name is Norma Knight, and I identify as bisexual. I also have a prosthetic eye, so I can't see out of this side, so watch out because I might hit you. I'd like to use big arm gestures. And I make content online I make music, and I also make videos about my disability, and I showcase that, and I also sometimes talk about my queerness. So yeah, that's what I'm all about.
Yeah, Ebony?
Hi, I'm Ebony Rose Dark. I'm visually impaired, and I identify as gay and binary. I'm a cabaret dance performance artist, and my work touches upon disability, sexuality, race, and LGBT chat and stuff. And I perform a lot and have a performance coming up soon on the 10th of September, which is exploring gender and also and visual impairment and all its complexities. Mm-hmm. And I'm wearing a multicoloured head wrap, pearls, which are kind of folded around my neck. I think they're like white or silver, I'm not sure, I'm colourblind. And grey-black jeans, black shoes, and I have a long white cane with a red handle on it. I'm also black Caribbean as well.
Okay. Actually, before we get to Hafsa, let's do a visual description. Sorry about that. I'll start. So I'm wearing a black top that says in the colours of the bisexual flag, "Not your third," and I'm also wearing a long skirt, also in the bisexual flag colours. How about yourself?
I am wearing a velvet purple jumpsuit covered in silver stars and a star tiara, and I also am wearing a green prosthetic eye.
Great. Sorry, now to you, Hafsa.
No my name is Hafsa. I use any pronouns, so she, her, they, them, he, him are all fine. I have to look at what I'm wearing. I'm wearing a rainbow jumpsuit. Sorry, I think there's some feedback. Rainbow jumpsuit, rainbow laces, and a blue headscarf, and I've got bi-pride coloured makeup, so colours of the bi flag. And I am bisexual, and I just go around talking about being queer and Muslim to a lot of people. I have a day job working in charity, and then in between that I try and fit in volunteer work and other things where I talk to people about being queer and being Muslim and about not having to pick a side when it comes to my identity.
Great. And finally, Jasper.
So my name is Jasper, and this is my sign name. My pronouns are he, him. I'm profoundly deaf and autistic and a wheelchair user. I have a company which is called Wheelie Queer, and I provide disability access services plus LGBTQ plus training for inclusion, particularly in terms of access to Pride events. Today I am wearing a t-shirt which has the rainbow alphabet of the British Sign Language, but in the colours of the bi flag. My glasses are also in the bi flag colours, and also my wheelchair is decorated with stickers and that represent those colours too.
Wonderful. Okay, so now that everyone's introduced themselves, I'm going to start with the questions. So basically how this works is there's one question for each person on the panel, but others can chime in and say their piece if you also have something to contribute. And I believe I'm going to start with a question for everyone first, and then I'll go to the individual questions. So the first question for everyone is, in what ways do you feel disability has impacted your experience of bisexuality, or vice versa? And in what ways do you think this intersection has been overlooked, both within and outside of the LGBTQIA+ community? So any of you, I guess, can raise your hands and start, or just jump in and just start the discussion, I guess.
So I feel personally, in my own personal experience, as a disabled bisexual person, I've had very different experiences with my disability, dating different genders, and very different experiences. So when I'm dating like women or women presenting people, the topic of disability is very, I found it very easy, or not ever really felt like I've had to have really, I felt very comfortable. But then with dating like, especially cis men, I felt almost uncomfortable about my disability. And sometimes they've made me feel uncomfortable about it, especially because it's a very aesthetic thing. And I don't know, that's just an experience I found. Like, it's interesting being bisexual and disabled and having like very different experiences within dating different genders with my disability. I don't know if anyone else has ever found that.
Yeah.
I just would like to comment that currently my kind of performance research and ongoing, I'm really fascinated with, most people are very used to, or like used to seeing things and they think they know what it is straight away. Mm-hmm. And if you fall between the lines, like blurred lines, it throws people. Mm. And that's why, like, I don't know, it's an ongoing. It's like people really don't seem to, if they can't see what they think you are, then, they're confused. Mm-hmm. Especially with like unforeseen disabilities. Like it throws people, and they'll either or they just get you, but they're for you.
One or the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. I feel like as someone with one of those invisible disabilities, I have arthritis. I have a lot of chronic illnesses. People don't don't read you as disabled until you've sometimes told them. Or like I'll have been seeing someone and I'll say, oh, I'm going for my medical infusion. Sorry if there's some feedback. I'm just going to move the mic a bit. I'll just say I'm going for my medical infusion. They'll be like, why? And it's like the way they see me has suddenly shifted. For some reason, when I talk about having arthritis or having specific conditions, the way they treat me changes, and all of a sudden it becomes incredibly patronizing and infantilizing and like, oh, are you okay? And sort of talking to me as if I can't communicate in a specific way, or like, it just shifts drastically. And I'm also autistic, and I'm very careful about where I share that in, because people do start to infantilize me in specific spaces. And that's been interesting. I think queer community has been, for me anyway, more accepting of disability. But I found like mainstream sort of dating and things like that a bit more difficult, having to sort of disclose that, because I want to be with people or be around people who understand that I'm disabled. I'm not going to take the stairs. I'm not going to go on a hike with you. So many hiking queers. And that's fine. That's their choice. It's their lifestyle. But as long as people understand, I'm not, my disability does not define me. It's a huge part of me, and I'm not ashamed of who I am and where I've come from. And I will tell people about who I am, but I don't want to be treated as less than because of it, which sounds obvious, but still needs to be said, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
So for me, I grew up disabled, so I feel quite comfortable with that presentation. And when I was growing up, I went to a very private, very religious school, which wasn't fun as a queer person. So I would say, you know, that experience of queerness was negative. And then within this, the idea then was there was the straight community or the gay community, that was it. And so the barriers were often to do with language, to do with identity. And then when I moved away to university, I started to get a bit more grasp and understanding of that. But there were still barriers linked to disabled access, linked to being out as a queer person in the deaf community. So I often felt I was falling between two different sites of access, you know, that about being deaf, disabled community, or the queer disabled community. And so it was often difficult to, you know, because the deaf community is very gendered, sign language is very gendered. So deaf people still use parents, and there's two different signs for parents. You can have this idea of a non-gendered idea of parenting, but you can also have the idea of parenting being linked to concepts of mother, father. So you sign it with an M and an F. So, you know, in the northeast, which is my locale, there is still lots of the sign language is gendered and is based and influenced from religion and from those old relationships between the church and disabled people. So there's a lot to navigate.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm sure many listening can resonate with some of the experiences that I definitely do. You know, I'm also autistic, and I think there is this stereotype of like the bisexual manic pixie dream girl, and yeah, that has been well documented. And you know, like we're definitely going to be talking about kind of stereotypes and stuff like and misconceptions about bisexuality a lot today, and that definitely intersects a lot with disability as well. Okay, so in terms of the specific individual questions, the first one is for Jasper. Jasper, could you share some of the common issues you've encountered when consulting on Pride accessibility? And what are some of the practical steps that BI organizations, event organizers can take to ensure that their spaces are accessible and welcoming to disabled people?
So I think the biggest problem is linked to access in terms of funding, trying to set up an event where there isn't enough funding to make changes or bring about accessibility. The second problem is time. So lots of companies, they don't think in advance of an event. So, for example, they might ask if any interpreters are available, 2 or 3 days before the event is actually being held. And of course, then there isn't anybody available. And it just doesn't work, that sort of time frame of embedding access. So really, you know, those basic things to do with money and time. And then also thinking about the actual journey, the different types of access. So companies might think about, okay, yes, wheelchair access. Yes, they give that a priority, but there are other considerations as well. So, for example, making sure that the advanced information is available to be shared within different formats, that the plans of how to get to a venue, the information about the audio and visuality of an event, also to not just have interpreters on a stage, but to have them for a parade, to make sure that they're around the site to allow for smooth communication, and to make sure it's easy to get contact information. Who is the person that you speak to check about accessibility, and have that as somebody who actually knows what they're talking about in terms of the site and disability. So I could talk about this for hours and hours, but really I think the main thing is linked to money and time would be the headlines.
Thank you so much for that, Jasper. I mean, does anyone else on the panel have something to add about accessibility for BI events and, how your experiences, any experiences to share?
I don't currently use a walking stick, but I used to use one before. And like you said, Jasper, sometimes events are wheelchair accessible, but they don't factor in how long it'll take me to walk there. And I used to I walk much slower than some other people. And with a mobility aid, I walk slower. And people are zooming ahead of me, trying to get to wherever they need to go. And they're like, oh, wait. And then watching me slowly move along. And sometimes there's a sense of shame around it. I've not felt ashamed of it, but there's this hurry of well, we've got a deadline, we need to do this. And like you said, Jasper, it's they've not accounted for the time of well, it's going to take me physically longer to get to the space. You're going to need to account for that. But you didn't think about that because you assumed everyone walks as fast as you or everyone moves as fast as you, and they don't just consider aspects like that.
Anyone else, or should I move on to the next question?
I think this makes a very good point.
Okay, yeah, very, very good points made, thank you. Okay, so the next question is for Norma. So Norma, what unique challenges have you faced as a disabled queer artist in the music industry specifically? And how have these challenges influenced your artistic journey and the messages you share? And what impact do you hope that your work will have on listeners and followers, especially within the bisexual community?
Wow, this is basically what all of my content is all about. I was signed to a record label about 8 years ago, and I'm very grateful for it, but it just was a very different time in the world and a time in my life as well. I was forced... But I didn't feel comfortable writing songs about my queerness because I wasn't fully out yet, even though I kind of knew I was queer. I did suggest it a few times because I used to write songs for other people as well. I did suggest it a few times that I would like to try writing some queer songs. And they're like, that's never really gonna kick off. It's not gonna be marketable. Just stick to the straight presenting songs. So in that experience, it's really cool now that now I'm independent and now I'm fully in my queerness and also my disability. I can make songs about anything that I like, about anyone that I like. And I feel, especially the world online, is a lot more open to this kind of art. There's a bigger community. People are beginning to really enjoy queer music. I get compared to Chapel Roan a lot. That is just really, really exciting because it's just so different from when I was so young and trying to be a musician myself all that time ago. But I will still say, even now, I'm independent because I'm finding it hard to find a management or a label that kind of understands me as a bisexual and a disabled person. It's almost like it's too niche. It's too, it's not marketable enough. We're just, reaching the point where queerness is now becoming marketable and making money. So, and I've had this experience in acting as well because I'm an actor. My particular disability is not... It's really hard to explain. It's not marketable because it's not that obvious, but it's still too obvious for the screen to be normal. So I feel like I'm in this kind of weird floaty area where I'm not normal enough for, I guess, like, I don't know how to explain, like normal kind of media, but I'm also not strange or marketable enough for the other side. So I'm kind of like this anomaly, but I am very proud of it. I am disabled enough. I am queer enough. I just feel like the world, especially like record labels and agents, haven't really caught up with that yet. But I'm just having fun now. I'm feeling very, very good in myself as an artist, and I'm just trying to be myself, and that is what it's all about. And I'm hoping that me just expressing myself fully in who I am can inspire others to do the same thing. It doesn't have to be in music, it can just be in their general lives. The whole point of my music is finding that expression within myself, and hoping that that transmutes into other people as well. And I just, when people listen to music, I just want them to feel proud of themselves and comfortable in their journey. They don't even have to be bi or disabled, whatever. I feel like everyone has something in their lives that they feel they don't fit in. But especially bi and disabled people, I hope that they can feel comfortable in themselves when enjoying my music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Norma. And I think you and also Jasper have both spoken to something that a lot of bi individuals experience, which is your identity, your sexuality being split up into halves. You've both spoken about like just feeling like half straight, half gay, or being perceived as such, or like having one side be perceived as more permissible than the other. And yeah, like this is something that really resonates with me, and I'm sure resonates with many people watching and as well. So yeah, like thank you for just bringing light to that.
Yes.
Ebony, like since you're also a performer, I was wondering whether you could speak to. I have a question for you as well, but I was wondering, just piggybacking off of this. Yeah, like what impact do you hope that your work and your performances will have on of people who follow you and watch you?
Generally, like just hopefully create more awareness, like across many communities, like the LGBT community, and also outside of that, because like we can all talk to ourselves, but the idea is that everyone has an awareness of like all abilities, all disabilities. Mm-hmm. And I'm aware that I'm how I was educated is my school was very rare. Mm-hmm. It's rare, probably rare now. Back then it wasn't rare. When I went to school, I was in a school with people that were, were visually impaired. There were deaf people. The people that had cerebral palsy, autism, everything. And so, like, my awareness of disability, I've had that since I was like a child. Mm. But I'm aware that's not everyone's situation. But by now, 2024, like, the idea that people should be kind of stepping up. Mm-hmm. And I feel, I just hope that my work reaches people and they become more aware of for me, like sensory disabilities, because we're the ones that get the one audio described show in a program, and everyone else gets many options. So, like, it's I'm just hoping to create awareness, basically.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so moving on. Next question is for Hafsa. So how has your experience as a Muslim, disabled, autistic, Indian, bi person informed your activism and public speaking?
Well,
very broad question.
All of my activism is around this, and like nobody lives a single issue life, as we probably already know the quote, but it affects everything that I do because I need to make sure I can access a space. But also, I find I'm mostly affected by my autism, where people don't always want to connect with me because they don't read me as queer enough, even in these spaces. and then I get othered quite a lot. I've actually found like a lot more acceptance in non-queer spaces, which makes me very sad because most of my work is going to places and talking about queerness. My day job working at a charity is talking to people who are having a very bad time dealing with their identity and wanting to talk to someone about it. And like it gets very, very intense. And I want to help reassure people by letting them know that, you know, there are people out there like me who hold many identity groups, and you're not alone in that. Many of us in this room hold many identities. We're part of many different groups, and that's a really wonderful thing about bi community. But I think what I wish I could see less of is maybe us then using that to police other people outside, where I've been to a queer event I'm speaking at, and people will think I'm not queer. And I can see it shift when I move to this side, and they're like, oh, you're speaking. Now you're a human being. And it reminds me of how people treat me with my disability, where they'll see my stick first, or they'll see me struggling to walk first, and then they'll speak to me and be like, oh, you can talk, which obviously is a horrendous thing to say, but I've had someone say that to me, where they treat you like there's something wrong with you, when I don't think there's anything wrong with me for being disabled. That's just who I am. And I see so many intersections between that, my disability, and my queerness, and all my other identities, where it's like, I've used these labels so other people understand who I am, and I use these labels for visibility so people know that they're not alone. But I'm dismayed at the times when I see us separating ourselves because this person doesn't speak the way I expected them to. This person doesn't present the way I expected them to. When I don't tell people that I'm disabled, when I don't tell people I don't have a degree, I'm from Aston in Birmingham, I'm not from London, all these things. It's like, oh, I didn't realize, oh wait, I should have given you some human respect because we're on the same level. I shouldn't have to say all of that in a way. I realize that's ironic because I'm here to talk about it. But just kind of bring it to brass tacks of we should just treat people like people. And I find it maddening that well, sorry, not the right word, but I find it frustrating that I keep having to have this conversation. Again, I know ironic because I'm like on a platform telling you about it. But if you stay with me here, yeah, and I just wish we reached a point where I could come up and say, I'm all these adjectives, and people like, you know, it's not that interesting anymore. But we're not there yet, so for now you've got me on the stage. So.
Yeah, I definitely think like when you are multiply marginalized, I definitely relate to a lot of what you said because I do a lot of public speaking as well, and I guess a lot of my content like around like relationships and open relationships is a sort of form of activism in itself. Like, yeah, like people seem to think you can't be multiple things at the same time. And so, yeah, like they'll define you by one thing and then it surprises you when turns out you are a multifaceted human, like many other people. So, yeah, thank you for saying that. Okay, so a question for Ebony, and also this is like a broader question as well, but specifically for you as a performer who is both visually impaired and also part of the LGBTQ+ community, how do you perceive like the current state of representation in the arts? So what progress have you seen, and where do you think there's still work to be done?
So at the moment, there has been a wonderful flourish, like, of LGBT artists actually wanting to make their work more accessible to visually impaired people. And so that's including exploring audio description in its broadest sense. So like, instead of it being like, instead of them getting someone else to do the work for them, they're like including it in the work, which is really beautiful. And what that means is it means those who are visually impaired and probably don't feel very confident about going to an LGBT venue might just go to an LGBT show instead. And that's really cool. And I'm loving that, and I'm hoping there's more LGBT artists that explore that idea of including audio description in their work because it makes it much more interesting and much more fun. Where there is work to be done. Like, I still feel that in terms of, like, venues and people's, like, knowledge of disability, it's still very bitty on that level.
Okay.
Like, so if it's an arts venue, generally it's kind of okay. But if it's an LGBT venue, then that's where the kind of cracks start to form. And what I'm hoping is that the more kind of LGBT venue, performance spaces and the venues kind of come together a bit more, or whatever training. What happens with the training is that it really needs to seep its way through so that there's no gaps. This year, London I don't know what it will take for people to be aware. But many years to venues like, it's all the LGBT took that money.
I was just going to say, is it because of funding? Because, yeah, the funding situation.
It was all the LGBT, all the non-LGBTs of pubs, and used it. And what I'm really fascinated an awful chain.
It's not
Yeah.
melding together, and there needs to be some sort of like thing in the middle that brings them together. Because I found the same thing. I actually have tried to run a queer venue once, and trying to do accessibility was incredibly difficult because one of the funding and everywhere in London, like a lot of places in London, is just with the budget is just not accessible. And then trying to get the staff that understand accessibility, it was an absolute, like, there needs to be some sort of connection between, because I found that really difficult myself. And it was the reason we only did the event once was because I was like, we need to sit back and figure out how we can get this to work, because it wasn't as accessible as I wanted it to be.
Yeah, and not just for organisers as well, but also for, you know, the attendees. I remember going to a queer event with my girlfriend who, ex-girlfriend who like had chronic fatigue, and just, you know, queuing to get in exhausted her so much that we ended up not going to the event at all. It was a real shame because we queued for like 20 minutes and that, you know, just kind of standing around was really exhausting. So, you know, like that kind of, like just having the, I guess like the you know, wheelchair accessible spaces or like whatever isn't enough. You also need to have staff trained and informed, and, you know, also for the community itself also to be educated, so then you're not getting stared at or othered or whatever, for sure. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a lot about, you know, everyone's work here on the panel. Everyone here has done amazing, incredible work. And, you know, we've talked a lot about, like, the issues going on, but I do want to end this panel on a more positive note. So I have another question for everyone on this panel, and this is a bit more of a personal question. Can you share a moment when you felt fully embraced, celebrated, joyful, included, and or affirmed as specifically a disabled person? And oh goodness,
The battery's gone out.
the battery's gone out. I'll just use this temporarily. So yeah, like basically, yeah, just share a moment of queer disabled joy. What did that experience mean to you?
Does anyone want to go?
Anyone of you can start.
Okay, I will actually say this is the first time ever today, actually. Not I've never been invited as a bi woman and a disabled person to speak and perform anywhere. This is the first time I've been celebrated as those two identities at the same time. So yeah, it's today.
Shows how far we have to come.
Exactly. I was like, when I heard, I was like, wait, literally just today.
Yeah, I would say, like, you know, just kudos to the Bi Pride organisers, like, for making this such like an accessible and just inclusive, amazing event. I've learned so much. You know, I started going, you know, and working at Bi Pride last year, and yeah, really rate it. So yeah, thank you all for coming. Yeah, any other kind of moments of queer joy? Well, maybe not specifically like the intersection of bisexuality and disability. It could be just a general.
I think Jasper. I think for me, Actually, my wedding 3 months ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Congratulations.
We made sure that it was an accessible event from the beginning right the way through to the end. We made sure that the invitations were in Braille, that there were interpreters available throughout the day and in the evening for the deaf people, but also for the hearing families. There was a caption. There was wheelchair dancers as the performance. The photographer was a deaf sign language user. And the venue had ramps and lifts, and there was clear signage. So it was just really lovely. I felt something was achieved.
That's beautiful. Congratulations. Yeah, like I'll share a story, which is I was at a queer event, and like I was getting like quite a lot of sensory overwhelm, I suppose. Like it's just from just the intensity of the lights and sounds, and it's I don't know if other neurodivergent people relate, but like, you know, my sensitivity to like sound and light is very inconsistent. You know, some days I'll be able to tolerate quite loud noises, you know, consistently, and it's fine, and other days like the smallest thing will set me off, and it was one of those days where I was feeling particularly sensitive. And you know, like you know, like I didn't even have to like kind of start voicing my discomfort. Like someone noticed that I was like a little bit, you know, dissociating, and they immediately asked to like dim the lights a little bit. Like they stopped this kind of strobe lighting, and yeah, to like turn down the music, and yeah, like it, and they were like checking in with me, getting me water, things like that, and it was like, you know, I'd never had kind of someone do that for me before and have kind of just be so attentive and attuned. And this was, you know, this was someone I met on the night. Like I didn't even know them. And so that was like a really affirming moment for me. Any other stories?
I sometimes, like, I have a weird job where sometimes I'm on stage, and like on Monday I was on stage at Pride, and there were just like loads of people, and people backstage were like, oh, I'm nervous, I'm scared, and I was like, this is fine. The thing that scares me the most is when you talk to a classroom of children, because children are terrifying. So like, for me, I think the queer joy of experience is being in a classroom with a charity like Diversity Role Models, or just like with the school, talking to kids about queerness, and sometimes they'll come up to me afterwards with their teacher and be like, I didn't know this was even possible. And they're not necessarily coming out to me, obviously, you know, they're on their own journeys, but it's just like you see the kind of cogwheel turn, especially when I'm talking to people in communities I grew up in where we don't talk about that, quote unquote. We don't speak about these issues. It's not appropriate, quote unquote, when we know it is. But I grew up in a very religious community where people don't talk about these things. And for me, it feels really affirming to be able to go back to those communities where the children are feral, but they are listening. Like I'll spend a whole day talking to about probably 100 kids throughout the day. And sometimes they're really loud, they're really rowdy, they ask the weirdest, worst questions because they don't have the filter that an adult would be like, this is not an appropriate question. But you see maybe one child or 10 kids throughout the day who are like starting to have a think about it. Maybe they have a friend who's queer or bi, or maybe they're by themselves and they're just thinking about it. I remember one moment, like I use any pronouns. I don't have a preference really. It's quite nice when people like jazz them up and like mix them up. That's quite fun. But I remember I introduced myself to a classroom of kids, and normally they'll just she, her, me. And it's fine, that's also one of my pronouns. But one kid right at the front used he, him pronouns, and I was like, yes, this is amazing. Like, I don't know, I just thought, it surprised me, because I came to a really sort of conservative style school, and I was just like, well, why did I assume this child wouldn't know how to do this? I'm the one who needs to check myself and learn from this too. So I had that like teaching moment of like, these kids are teaching me.
Ebony, do you have any?
I think just to say, like, in terms of how things have moved on, like, since I started performing at London Pride, the whole access has been quite good, and like I've been made to feel like really comfortable. my access needs have been met. And this year it was just amazing. I mean, the team there, from last year to this year, there was a huge change. And in terms of facilities, there's a perform what we had, and I had a makeup artist, and she was fantastic. And yeah, and then the next experience was Happy Valley Pride in Hebden Bridge, which was so lovely. And again, like, I'm not sure if you know Docky, but Docky do a very good club night, but they also do outreach called Posh Club. And in all the years I've been performing with them, their access, you know, nothing's impossible. It's never an issue. It's never a problem. And I just love that. They've kind of, yeah, I'd say that those are my like, two big special things this year. Yeah.
Amazing.
And being here.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, and with that ending on that lovely note, that is the end of the panel section of this, and now we're moving on to Q&A for the next 13 minutes until 3:30. But I do want to say, like, thank you for sharing, you know, your experiences and your insights, and you know, just information and hopes, like, for like what there is still to be done. And yeah, hopefully we'll get some good questions today. So I'm not sure how the questions work. Is it like a kind of raise your hand kind of situation? Yes. Okay. So there will be a roving mic. Lovely. Okay. So I think there was one question. Yeah, you raised your hand first. So one question here.
How do I help people in situations that I can't relate to? For example, I have a Muslim girlfriend that's also bisexual in a heavily religious and homophobic and transphobic family.
I feel like I was made for this question.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, if it's okay for me to interject.
Of course.
So, I mean, a large part of my work is just listening. As much as you want to kind of be like, oh, I want to help, and like people share what's going on, it sounds really awful. Sometimes the best thing you can do is listen to what's happening. Where if your partner is saying, I'm having a rubbish time, you're just like listening and affirming that because it sounds like a rubbish time. And just educating yourself on what might be going on for your girlfriend, like talking about, you know, the community and things like that. And also just knowing when you don't know everything. I've been very frustrated in previous relationships. I'm also poly, so where I've talked to people who are not from my community group, like, oh, I know exactly what that's like. I'm like, you don't though, and it's fine. There's a lot of experiences I know nothing about, and that's fine. All I can do is learn as much as possible to empathize, but I will never really know. So I think just for me, it's really affirming to hear from someone like, I don't know what that's like. I mean, like with, you know, in a nice way, I can't relate to that specifically, but I'm glad you shared that with me, you know, thanking you for sharing that with me and affirming that and trying to do things that are like nice distraction techniques as well, or, you know, finding a different space to be in sometimes as well.
That's kind of what I've already been doing, but I feel like I want to do more.
I think it's, you know, important to put the other person first, you know, like what do they need? Like some people want, like affirmation and listening and, you know, like everything you've said, Hafsa. But, you know, sometimes they might move to like a more kind of solution-oriented mindset, you know? Like, so I think it's, like I relate to the kind of, you know, desire to want to like fix things because it's horrible seeing someone that you care about going through like a crappy time. But, you know, sometimes it's about kind of sitting with them, and sometimes it's about trying to kind of offer kind of some kind of solution, or sometimes it's just accepting and sitting in the discomfort together. You know, that can be very valuable as well. But yeah, like I think kind of putting them first and like what they need first, and, you know, like, letting them know that you're there for them. Yeah.
I just want to give a shout out. I'm not sure if you know about Club Cali. It is a club, but that's also like a community of LGBTQI plus people from Muslim, all different backgrounds, and they run like little community groups and things and events. It might be just a nice space for you both to go to, interact with, and also speaking to who runs that, Rita, I don't know her surname, but she runs that Club Cali. It's a very lovely community and really nice to interact with.
Yeah, like finding a community is really important. So encouraging your partner to go to those events and find other people going through similar experiences. You know, if you can't relate, you know, like it might sometimes like just being able to encourage your partner to go to those events and meet other people to give voice and put a name to their experiences, and so, you know, to help them articulate their experiences to you as well. Yeah. Jasper?
Also, just to add to that, to see what your girlfriend is preference. So, for example, I've been in a situation before where it's just watching a film together with my partner, which feels like representative of their experience, or maybe finding a book, or just being together within the feeling, and, you know, for her to be with you through that. You know, you can't change the family necessarily, but what does she want you to do so that you know what is best going into those events?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like my family isn't particularly accepting either, and I think, you know, in general, like obviously it's very hurtful when the people who like raised you, know you very well, like love you, like aren't kind of accepting this very integral part of your identity. But you have to learn, you know, to, you know, pick your battles with these things. I think sometimes you're wasting your time and energy trying to convince someone to respect you when they're very committed to misunderstanding you. And so, you know, like sometimes it's about protecting your own peace as well. Like, yeah, you know, like Jasper said, you can't choose your family. Yeah, okay. Any other questions? Yes, one question here in the cowboy hat.
I talked about this a little bit with my partner, Kelsey, up here. Norma, sorry. And one of the things we had a debate on is, do you, if you're going on a first date with somebody, do you owe them openness or awareness about your disability? Or is it something that you don't feel like you need to talk about, discuss, divulge at all? And I heard someone say that sometimes people are surprised, or a person might be surprised as you're going through your normal experiences, that these are your experiences, which tells me that possibly it wasn't divulged. So I thought it was very interesting because it's very akin to the debate about being trans as well, and being how open do you have to be, what do you owe people with your intersectionality?
I don't know anybody, anything, is my opinion. Sorry, I've hijacked again.
No.
I think I do talk about disability a lot, but I talk about it from an access point of view. Like the hiking queers and we will not get on. Sorry. But if they're like, oh, yeah, like, because I've been dating recently for my sins. And if someone's like, oh, shall we do this activity? I'm like, no, I don't like walking. Like, I don't want to expand because I don't feel like I need to. If someone shares that they're disabled with me, I'll probably say, yeah, I have arthritis. But so many people do not understand what arthritis is that I'd rather I know that they're informed about disability. Because otherwise I get a lot of, I thought only older people got that, or really weird questions. So I will always tell my access needs straight up, but I'm not ashamed of who I am and all my disabilities, but I just don't feel like it's always relevant. But obviously that's not the same conversation as talking about gender identity, so I'd be curious to hear other people weigh in on that.
I think it's a very personal thing. It really depends on the person and how you feel about expressing that to somebody you're just dating. Personally, I like to disclose it quite early on the first date, because it literally reveals to me if this is the right person to continue having a relationship with, because it shows me what type of person they are. And that's basically the only reason I do it. It's not really to like give them like it's like I owe them it. It's just for me personally, my own, like, yeah, it's just kind of like picking people out. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, Jasper was. Oh, apologies. I think for me, it's really just to be honest, to jump in, and that they will know that for me, they're going to know I'm disabled as soon as they see me. So, you know, on a first date, you would inform them before, because I don't want to waste my time. If they're going to say something negative, I don't want to hear it, and I'm not going to want to date them. So it's, you know, if, you know, I don't want to give them time to learn sign language before I can date them, you know. And I don't want to be trying to go to places that are not accessible. It's a waste of time. And so really I only want to date people where I feel I can be myself, where I'm respected, and where I can be in that relationship as an equal.
Yeah, like, so I think it's not a question of owing, is kind of what I'm hearing from the panel, which I also agree with. But it is, you know, it's a very personal preference, and I think it, you know, bringing it up when it's relevant makes sense. And yeah, I guess, you know, there's a safety element to it, because obviously with some conditions, especially those that are less visible, you know, there is a safety element of disclosing kind of private medical information to people that you don't know that well. So there is that to consider. But on the other hand, you know, while there's the physical safety element to consider, there's also the emotional safety element of, you know, dealing with someone who is misinformed, or like, you know, says things to you that you don't necessarily want to have the energy to educate in the moment, that kind of thing. And so I think it is a toss-up. I take the same approach as Norma. Like, I let people know about things like as soon as possible. I'm probably more upfront about some things than others. Being poly, I'm super upfront with. Being queer, I'm super upfront with. And you know, people can see that I'm a person of color. You know, with the neurodivergence, like, it kind of comes up in conversation most of the time, but it's not something I necessarily lead with because of the misconceptions that people have around, you know, autism and ADHD. So. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. But yeah, I don't think it's about owing. Okay, so unfortunately, we are out of time. It's now 3:30. But you know, I guess a final thing, like, where can people find you, like online, perhaps?
Yeah, you can just search Norma Knight on every single platform. I'm also performing at 8:30 today, so you can see me there.
You can find me on Instagram. That's Ebony, EBONY_Rose_dark. I'm performing at the Place on the 10th of September, 7:30, and the show is called In Here, Out There. It's my first full kind of debut work. So yeah, 10th of September, the Place. You can also find me on Facebook, same name, and YouTube as well.
Great.
You can find me, if you just search my first name and bisexual, I show up. So Hafsa, or you can search at Ms. Hafsa Qureshi and you'll find me everywhere. Or just search Muslim bisexual, I show up also. There's loads of us. I just, Google SEO really likes me. I don't.
So, X or Twitter and Instagram. My work is called Wheelie Queer. And also my personal is Queer Can't Hear.
Nice. Brilliant. And you can find me, my name's Leanne Yao. If you search Leanne Polyamory, I'll probably come up. But my Instagram, I'm mostly on Instagram, but I'm on all social media platforms at the same handle, at Polyphilia blog. So POLYPHILIABLOG. And that's the end. I hope you enjoy the rest of Bi Pride. There's a lot of really, really exciting panels today. I'm also going to be on a panel later. I'll be on the bisexual education panel at 7:50, so you can see me again. I'll be on the panel, not moderating then. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.